Isla Contoy, everything about the visit, we are not going to fool you. The Yucatán Peninsula, like all of Mexico, is quite full of people. The big cities, the Mayan ruins, the beaches, the small towns, are magnets for tourists. Isla Contoy is also one, and few trips to the Riviera Maya end without stepping on it. But, despite that, it is almost a haven of peace. Because it is a national park and the number of tourists is limited. Be careful, that does not mean that you are going to be alone, nor are you going to think that it is a closed park. To begin with, there are hardly any buildings on Isla Contoy. There is also no asphalt or cement, nor streets in general. You will only find open paths in the vegetation and on land, beach sand in many cases. Obviously, you won't see cars either. And you don't go to Isla Contoy for the civilization, you go for its birds, its vegetation, its Caribbean beaches, the kind that fit perfectly with the adjective paradisiacal, and its marine fauna, including turtles. Contoy Island, where it is within Mexico and Quintana Roo, it is not surprising that the number of tourists who can travel to Isla Contoy is limited, taking into account its location in Mexico, in the state of Quintana Roo. And where is Isla Contoy? Well, about 35 kilometers north of Cancún, very close to the end of the Isla Blanca Peninsula, with its beaches and luxury resorts. Taking into account its location so close to one of the country's tourism centers, imagine the number of people there would be if it were not limited to 200 people per day. By the way, Isla Contoy is part of the municipality of Isla Mujeres, which is not only the island itself, but also much of the territory north of Cancún. How to get there from Cancún and Isla Mujeres on your own? Bad news, if you were planning to travel to Isla Contoy on your own, you can't. We have already said that the number of visitors is limited, and it is limited by limiting the places on the tours that go there. Please note that since there is no infrastructure of any kind other than roofs under which tour staff prepare meals, there is no point in having a regular ferry service there either. Tours to Isla Contoy and Isla Mujeres from Cancún or Playa del Carmen, they will take you by bus to the pier in Cancún where the boats leave, where you can first have a buffet breakfast. After a journey of just under an hour, you will arrive at Isla Contoy. Once there, after a walk through the natural park and a visit to the museum, you will have free time to enjoy the beaches. Meanwhile, the crew will prepare food based on fresh grilled fish. Depending on the weather conditions, the snorkeling will be before or after the meal. In our case, it was after. On the return trip to Cancún, a stop is made in Isla Mujeres with free time. The truth is that, in our opinion, after the tranquility of Isla Contoy, finding ourselves in the middle of a totally touristy island, full of souvenir shops and beaches saturated with loud music, was enough for us. What to bring and what not to Isla Contoy. Isla Contoy National Park is a cosmetics-free zone. You will not be able to use sunscreen, biodegradable ones are not recommended either, or makeup, or any other beauty product. The layer of oil they create on the surface of the sea limits the amount of solar rays that reach the bottom, killing the corals. Get a long-sleeved UV-protected t-shirt and take it off just for the photo. As we say in our tips for traveling to the Riviera Maya, you have to be careful with the sun and do like the locals who cover all their skin. What we also advise you to bring is a light scarf to cover your neck, or a pair of pants like the boat crew do. Not only because of the sun, but also because of the mosquitoes. In the museum area, we found a huge number and, as there are only 200 tourists a day, quite hungry. In principle, mosquito repellents are allowed on the island, but our advice is to avoid them if possible, also covering your skin as with the sun. What to see in Isla Contoy National Park? We have already said it. What you have to see on Isla Contoy is nature. That is why we are in a national park. Despite that, with little to see, many of our tour companions decided to miss it to spend more time on the beach. Don't be like that. You'll have plenty of time, but when else are you going to tour the Isla Contoy National Park or visit its museum? Well, the guided walk through Isla Contoy National Park is quite short. From the boat docking area to the top of a hill from which you can see much of the island's surface. We are talking about less than 9 kilometers long and 200 to 700 m wide, mostly covered by vegetation. The museum is visited on the way down. There we find turtle shells and the area is a sanctuary. From the beach, another path leads to a small inland lake on the island, surrounded by mangroves. And that's it, there are no more trails and the rest of the island is closed to tourism. That said, there isn't much to see, but the beach with the palm trees almost on the sand leaning towards the turquoise waters of the Caribbean Sea is more than enough reason to go. Another of the attractions of Isla Contoy is still missing, its marine fauna. A barrier reef, hundreds of colorful fish, starfish and, if you're lucky, a turtle. Always, depending on the visibility conditions of the sea and whether the crew considers it safe to snorkel. Flora and fauna, turtles. The numbers of the flora and fauna of Isla Contoy are dizzying, almost 100 species of plants, more than 150 species of tropical seabirds, 234 species of fish and 14 of reptiles. It is not surprising that it was protected as a national park in 1998, although it had already been a nature reserve area and wildlife refuge since 1961. We are not able to distinguish between the different plants. Yes, we do recognize the mangroves, and almost not even between the birds. But we can say that there are cormorants, frigatebirds, giant herons and brown pelicans, which we already knew after our time in the Siankan Biosphere Reserve. In the marine area of the park there are whale sharks, the largest concentration in the world, dolphins, barracudas, octopuses, but it is very difficult, practically impossible, to see any while snorkeling. We say this so that you don't get your hopes up. The turtles deserve a special mention. We are in a sea turtle sanctuary for a reason. Of the 7 species of turtles that exist, 3 nest on Isla Contoy: the green turtle, Chelonia midas, the hawksbill turtle, Eretmocles imbricata, and the loggerhead turtle, Caretta caretta. It has not been seen for years, but before then, so did the leatherback turtle, Dermocheles coriacea. Of course, don't think that you are going to see them spawning on the beach. To begin with, they do so on non-touristy beaches. 10 spawning beaches on the island are monitored and, in addition, they are protected so that tourists do not interfere with their natural cycle. Are there hotels on Isla Contoy? And restaurants? If from the top of the hill that you reach with the walk through Isla Contoy you see some buildings and think that we have deceived you. No, they are the accommodations for the researchers and volunteers who live in the natural park. There are no hotels on Isla Contoy, nor is camping allowed. All tourists who arrive with the tours have to leave the island with the same boats. We assume that there will also be kitchens in these structures because the researchers will eat, but they are not open to tourists. On Isla Contoy, there are no restaurants as such. Each service provider has an assigned covered grill area where they prepare the food, freshly caught fish, and eat it. Thanks for watching the video, friends. I hope you liked it.